I've seen a lot of people online saying that the heavyweight division right now is in a terrible state because you've got quote unquote crap fighters like Deontay Wilder holding world titles, and that the heavyweights of the 90s would destroy these guys. Well, the 1990s was really my decade when it comes to boxing, particularly heavyweight boxing. It is the decade in which I really became a hardcore boxing fan. I was watching boxing from the 80s, but it wasn't until the 90s that I really got stuck in and became obsessed, literally obsessed with the sport. I was far more obsessed with boxing in the 1990s than I am today. It's not even close. I had like an obsessive compulsive type obsession with boxing. I used to buy every single publication there was, from KO magazine to Ring magazine to Boxing News to Boxing Monthly to Boxing Illustrated to the Marshall Cavendish monthly, was it monthly or bi-monthly boxing publication that used to come out with a VHS strapped to the front of it. I used to scan CFAX and Teletext every day, every weekend looking for boxing news. This is way before the days of the internet, obviously. I was completely obsessed with boxing. This is also the time when I started boxing myself. So you're not going to sit there and try to tell me about the 1990s, comparing them today, to the era today, because I know all about the 1990s, particularly with heavyweight boxing, which was always my favorite division. So let me give you a refresher on what the 1990s was really like, how the critics at the time viewed the 1990s heavyweight division, and how there are parallels to what's going on today. Well, first of all, dipping into the mid-80s, late 80s, early 90s, to start with, Mike Tyson was champion from the mid-80s to the early 90s. He had most of his wins during his first reign as champion over Larry Holmes leftovers and fighters with drink and drug problems. Facts. I'm not making it up. I know all about Mike Tyson's career. I was studying Mike Tyson from before a lot of these Tyson fanboys who claim to know all about him even knew what boxing was. I was obsessed with Tyson and his career when I was, a young boy and a young teenager. I knew all about Tyson, watched all his fights over and over again. Mike Tyson's fights during his first reign as heavyweight champion were against Larry Holmes leftovers and fighters with drink and drug problems. Facts. You can't tell me about Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson lost when he was in his early 20s as heavyweight champion to a fringe contender / journeyman in Buster Douglas. There weren't no long count or nothing like that. He received the same count that Tyson himself got in the 10th. He got battered from pillar to post by a journeyman when he was in his early 20s as a champion. Put that into perspective. Digest that. Then we move on from Tyson and his reign over Larry Holmes leftovers and guys with drink and drug problems. Evander Holyfield, he was nearly knocked out by a journeyman and Burt Cooper. Burt Cooper took a title shot against Holyfield on, what was it, a week or 2 weeks notice or something like that? I think it might have even been less than that. Burt Cooper, a journeyman, nearly knocked Holyfield out in that fight. Holyfield, an all-time great, nearly knocked out by a late replacement journeyman in a heavyweight title fight. Holyfield also struggled with an ancient Larry Holmes. Went 12 rounds with an ancient fat George Foreman. That's Holyfield. And Holyfield is an all-time great, just like Tyson is. But these guys were not infallible. People need to take their rose-tinted glasses off and stop looking at these guys of yesteryear like they were invincible and they would just walk through today's heavyweight division. They lost to far lesser fighters than the likes of Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua. Fact. Riddick Bowe, one of the major fighters of the 1990s in the heavyweight division, he got a gift decision over an over-the-hill Tony Tubbs. Go watch the fight. Anybody can see that on YouTube. My man got a gift decision. Even at the time, the critics were saying, look, Riddick Bowe didn't really win that fight against Tony Tubbs. That was a gift. And this is an ancient Tony Tubbs. Riddick Bowe was also hurt by a washed up Tyrell Biggs. I mean, Biggs was washed up beyond belief. And he blatantly hurt Riddick Bowe and had him backpedaling in that fight. Go watch it. That's on YouTube. And obviously Bowe was battered from pillar to post twice by Andrew Golota. Andrew Golota is not going to make anybody's all-time great list. He was a talented heavyweight, but there are talented heavyweights today. And Golota battered Riddick Bowe twice. And it's only because Golota was so insane that he ended up losing both of those fights on disqualification, because he was well ahead in both fights and destroying Riddick Bowe. The second fight, I mean, that was a massacre. Lennox Lewis, another all-time great. He went the distance with a journeyman called Levi Billups, and that was a tough fight. Lewis finished the fight needing stitches in his face. His face was all puffed up and busted up. Fighting a journeyman, Levi Billups. That fight went 10 rounds. A few months later, it might have been, I don't know, maybe a year later, Billups was knocked out in 1 round by Corey Sanders. So this journeyman, who gets knocked out by 1 round in Corey Sanders, manages to take Lennox Lewis 10 rounds and give him a tough fight. Think about that. You're trying to tell me Levi Billups is going to beat what the heavyweights said today? I'm telling you, Levi Billups today would still be a journeyman just like he was in the 90s. And he gave Lewis a very tough fight. Lewis was later knocked out in 2 rounds by fringe contender / journeyman Oliver McCall. That's what McCall was. Many of the boxing publications and the journalists referred to Oliver McCall going into the Lewis fight as a journeyman. This is a guy who'd lost to Buster Douglas. This is a guy who had plenty of losses on his record going into the Lewis fight. He was regarded as a journeyman. And he went in there and he knocked Lewis out in 2 rounds. That was at the London Arena in 1995. I remember the fight was televised on some strange cable station in the UK. It wasn't on Sky. It wasn't on terrestrial television. It was some strange cable station. Lewis only had 1 fight with them. From what I remember, it was only the 1 fight. And yeah, he got knocked out in 2 rounds by a journeyman / fringe contender in Oliver McCall. Oliver McCall's not an all-time great. He had a great chin, tough guy, but never a great fighter. But yet he knocked out a great fighter in Lennox Lewis, a guy who is regarded today as one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. Then I'm sure most of you know, Lewis was knocked out by Hasim Rahman. Hasim Rahman was a contender. He wasn't regarded as a journeyman. And I guess this is in the 2000s now. But still, he's not going to make anyone's all-time great list. And this guy knocked Lennox Lewis nearly out cold in South Africa. So this is the 90s, people. These are the fighters of the 90s. They're losing to people who are not as good as Anthony Joshua or Deontay Wilder, or even Joseph Parker in some cases. The 90s fighters are losing to far lesser opponents than the guys who call themselves champion today. And if you want to talk about weak champions, because people are saying, Wilder's such a terrible champion. You want to talk about weak champions? Buster Douglas was a champion in the 90s. Francisco Demiani was a champion in the 90s. You know about Demiani? Herbie Hyde, no disrespect, was a champion in the 90s. Michael Bent was a champion in the 90s. Heavyweight champion. Henry Akinwande was champion in the 90s. Look, Henry Akinwande, I've seen people say he would beat Deontay Wilder. Henry Akinwande would be scared to death in a ring against Deontay Wilder. Let me tell you that. Him and Wilder are the same height, Wilder has got 10 times as much heart as Akinwande ever had. Let me tell you that straight. Akinwande had some ability. When he fought Lennox Lewis, this man held on until he got disqualified. He had his own corner cussing him and shouting at him and telling him to stop holding and actually fight. But he was petrified against Lennox Lewis. Petrified. Journeyman showed more heart against Lennox Lewis than Henry Akinwande did. And you're trying to tell me this guy's going to beat Deontay Wilder? I'm not saying it's beyond the realms of possibility, but you'd have to make Wilder favorite against Henry Akinwande. People, please. Akinwande got himself disqualified against Lennox Lewis because he would not fight. He flat out refused to fight and just held on because he was scared to death. Wilder has got way too much heart for a guy like that. And that's a guy who was champion in the 90s. He held the WBO belt. And people want to talk about Deontay Wilder's terrible technique. Oh, he's got terrible technique. This just shows that it's a terrible era when a guy with such poor technique can be a champion. So I suppose you never saw George Foreman fight then. George Foreman is regarded as an all-time great, and rightly so. But people, George Foreman's technique was atrocious. Let's not say it was even bad. His technique was atrocious. Have you ever seen a prime George Foreman throw a straight right hand? I haven't. I've seen Deontay Wilder throw plenty of straight right hands. Yeah, he throws some wild ones too, but he throws a lot of straight shots with the right hand. I cannot remember a prime George Foreman throwing a straight right hand. Maybe the George Foreman who came back when he was an old man, when his technique wasn't quite as wild. Yeah, he threw some straight right hands, but the prime George Foreman, I never saw him throw a straight right hand. Everything was some looping, swinging shot. You go look at when he fought Muhammad Ali, he was swinging all over the place. Muhammad Ali was whispering in his ear during the rumble in the jungle, telling him you're swinging like a sissy. George Foreman's technique was horrible, but it didn't stop him being an all-time great. People get far too wrapped up in the technique and all this kind of business. What you need to do is look at the results. Deontay Wilder's fighting guys who have better technique than he does, but yet he's still beating them, isn't he? Why is this lost on so many people? They are obsessed with this guy's technique. Obsessed with it, and they're totally ignoring the fact that he's effective. Whatever a person's technique is, the proof is in the pudding. You could have the greatest technique in the world. It doesn't mean you're going to be a top fighter. Audley Harrison had great technique. You look at the way Audley Harrison throws his punches. He was never wild swinging. His punches were always well delivered, but he went nowhere as a professional. It's not all about technique, people. And sometimes Wilder's lack of technique actually makes him effective because he's so unpredictable, because the punches are coming from such unusual angles. I mean, you look at lighter weights, Ricardo Mayorga, he had horrible technique. Go look at his fight. His 2 fights against Vernon Forrest. The first fight shocked everybody. Vernon Forrest was coming off 2 wins over Shane Mosley. Shane Mosley at the time was regarded as pound for pound number 1. Vernon Forrest beat him twice. And people were thinking, okay, now Vernon Forrest has got to be pound for pound. And Vernon Forrest gets knocked out by this wild swinging, unknown fighter from Nicaragua. This chain smoking, wild swinging fighter called Ricardo Mayorga. And people were left scratching their heads, including me, like, how could a guy with such poor technique, chain smoker, wild swinging, beat a classy boxer like Vernon Forrest, a guy who's on pound for pound lists and stuff like that? How could that happen? It's not all about technique, people. Technique helps a lot. Don't get it twisted. In most cases. But don't write a guy off just because the technique ain't there. He might have other attributes that make up for his lack of technique, at least partially. And Wilder certainly does. The proof is in the pudding, people. So, yeah, people need to take off their rose-tinted glasses when it comes to this Deontay Wilder business, when it comes to the current state in the heavyweight division. Those of you who have been subscribed to me for any length of time will know that I've been saying that this era of heavyweight boxing right now is the new golden era. Oh yeah. We basically, in the past few decades, let's say the past 40, 50 years, we've had two golden eras in heavyweight boxing that are universally recognized as golden eras. The 1970s, when Ali, Frazier, Foreman, Norton, etc. were around. The 70s is regarded as a golden era, and the 90s is also regarded as a golden era when you had Lewis, Holyfield, Tyson, Riddick Bowe, Michael Moorer, etc. And I wasn't around in the 70s to know how boxing was regarded then, but certainly I was around in the 90s and I know all about 90s heavyweight boxing. And I can assure you that the general consensus was it was a weak era. This is what the majority of boxing journalists and fans were saying at the time. They were saying the 90s is a terrible era, and most of the 90s was taken up. Certainly the first half of the 90s was taken up by people lamenting about how poor the division was and how we needed Mike Tyson to come out of prison and save this awful division. This is all people were saying. You'd speak to the man on the street about the heavyweight division. You speak to your friend. You'd read The Ring or KO magazine. And all these people would say, oh God, the division is so terrible. People like Lewis, he's such a fraud. Moore's got a glass jaw. Holyfield's an old cruiserweight. Oh God, we need Tyson to come out of prison and save us from this terrible division. This is all people were saying. And when Tyson came out of prison, what happened to him? He got knocked out and beaten the crap out of by a supposedly washed up Evander Holyfield, a blown up cruiserweight. Beat the crap out of Mike Tyson. Because people's perceptions of the division were not realistic. People were thinking it was a weak division. It wasn't a weak division. And over the hill, Holyfield beat Mike Tyson. Tyson wasn't 100% himself, but Holyfield certainly wasn't in his prime. And he beat Tyson, the guy who they thought was going to come out and save the division. I remember when Tyson beat Frank Bruno in the rematch, and you had all these people. I remember reading KO magazine, and he had interviews with Hulk Hogan and all kinds of different people in KO magazine. They had a whole bunch of editions of KO magazine and Ring magazine, which were completely dedicated to Mike Tyson. I remember I used to own these publications. A whole bunch of them, Boxing Illustrated, and all of them did publications totally dedicated to Mike Tyson. Sometimes multiple publications dedicated to Tyson when he came out of prison. And even when he was in prison. But certainly when he came towards the end of his jail term and when he came out, it was just Tyson mania in the boxing press. And many people after he beat Bruno in the boxing press were saying he's better than ever now. He's actually better than he was before jail, because they saw his performance against Peter McNeely, against Buster Mathis Jr., against Bruce Seldon. There were some questions when he fought Buster Mathis because he was missing a lot. But when he beat Bruno in the rematch and beat Bruce Seldon, trust me on this one, people, there were lots of people within the boxing fraternity, lots of boxers, top professional boxers, pundits, who were saying Tyson is better now than he was before prison. That's what people were saying. There were very few people who were saying he's not the same. Teddy Atlas, Tyson's former trainer, was saying Tyson's not the same. But I'm telling you, the majority of people in boxing were saying Tyson's just as good as he was before prison or better. Until he lost to Holyfield. Then when he lost to Holyfield, all of a sudden, oh, he's not the same. People, please. The Holyfield fight proved that those people on the Tyson bandwagon within the boxing media and those people who'd been bashing the division for 3-4 years while Tyson was locked up, those people were proven to be very short-sighted. Those people were proven to be wrong about the division. That's what Holyfield beating Tyson proved. The division was nowhere near as weak as they were saying it was. In fact, it was a strong division. And in fact, it's just a case of Tyson not having fought guys of that level when he was champion. That's the reality of it. Tyson never fought anyone even close to as good as Holyfield, Lewis, etc. during his prime years. Not even close. The 90s was a far stronger era than the mid to late 80s in the heavyweight division. 100% facts. Far stronger. So, yeah, all I would say to people is, look, We don't know how Deontay Wilder would have done in the 90s. I'm sure there are some fighters he would have lost to, and I'm sure there are some fighters he would have beat, top fighters in the 90s. Same with Joshua. Same with Parker. Let's enjoy this heavyweight era as it is right now, instead of lamenting about how terrible it is and how good it was back in the days. No, it's good now. The heavyweight division is good right now. You've got Wilder, who's exciting, reckless, yes, but exciting, explosive. People comparing this guy to Michael Grant? Are you kidding me? Wilder is explosive, is exciting. We got Joshua, we got Parker, we got Tyson Fury waiting in the wings. And I got to give a shout out to Tebow. He knows who he is. Tebow was saying that the way Mike Tyson was viewed in the 1990s is similar to how Tyson Fury is viewed today, in the sense that he was seen as the savior of the division. Because, again, people said the division was weak in the 90s and we were praying for Tyson to come back and save the division. He came out and he couldn't save no division. In fact, he got battered by Holyfield. Lost 2 fights to him, back to back. And with Tyson Fury, it's the same thing now. Oh, God, these guys can't box. These Anthony Joshuas and Wilders, these guys can't box. Parker's weak as well. They're expecting Tyson Fury to come back and just reign supreme. Let me tell you something, people. He's not going to reign supreme. Is he going to pick up wins? Yes. But it's like I've been telling you guys for years now. For the past, 2 years? Or 3 years, I've been saying on my channel, go look up the videos on my channel. I've been telling you that this is a new golden era in heavyweight boxing. Why is it a new golden era? Because one guy is not going to dominate in this era. I've heard people trying to say Anthony Joshua is going to just dominate the division. Nobody else is going to be able to touch him. This is what people have been saying. Certainly prior to Joshua beating Klitschko, and even after he beat Klitschko. This is what people were saying. Nobody's going to touch Joshua. He's just going to walk through the division. No, he's not. No, he's not. And the same goes for Tyson Fury. People say, no, Fury's going to come back and dominate. No. Not going to happen. All these top heavyweights are going to start swapping wins and losses against each other in a round robin type situation, just like it was in the 1990s. You're not going to get one guy head and shoulders above everybody, remaining undefeated for his entire career. Not going to happen. Parker, Joshua, Wilder, and Fury are all going to take L's. Some of them will take L's against each other, and some of them will also take L's against fighters who pull upsets against them. That's what's going to happen. Just wait and see it unfold. Anyway, yeah. Moral of the story is, take off them rose-tinted glasses and let's just enjoy the heavyweight division as it is right now. Yeah? It's happening. I'm out.